You can't, there's none of those countries you're pointing to buy and whatever. They didn't start there. They started by building their infrastructure. You need the infrastructure, you need the systems, you need the ecosystem for those to thrive. They don't happen overnight. So, I mean, a lot of this is just, basically talk that is not based on, proper in-depth thing. And I hope that people have actually read, this, budget, in detail. We've put the budget out on our website so that, we can look at this on the line. And then when you look at, even within oil, okay, some of the items are also one-off items. For instance, right now, there's ongoing renewal of licenses, licenses, which will give rise to, bonuses, signature bonuses and whatever, which are one-off. These have also been, factored in and have impacted, of course, the relative size of the, budget for this. You heard Mr. President talk about the directive to EPR to recover, all of the outstanding, royalties and other, fees in the industry.
Mr. Kabose, if I may come in here,
they have a 3-month
still
deadline.
talking about that oil revenue bit. Was it also taken into cognizance the fact that OPEC might be restricting Nigeria's production to less than 2 million barrels, especially now that they are discussing cutting down on oil output across the world?
First of all, if you heard Mr. President, he said 2.3 million barrels per day, including condensates. Condensates don't count towards the OPEC quota. And therefore, and Nigeria's potential for condensate is about 450,000 barrels per day. If you net that out of that number, that's what you see. If as you also get domestic refining capacity up, that those don't, basically count. So again, I'm not sure people have factored this in. And then, Dr. Kunyemi talks about the political factors and whatever. Unfortunately, in modeling, we haven't figured out a way to model in what the big three may be thinking. In the same way that, last year, when we were doing the 2018, we couldn't model in what the big three may be thinking. But that thinking resulted in us seeing oil prices up to $84 per barrel, whereas the budget was based on 51. And so when it comes to, oil price projection, as I said, there are people who, would follow this thing. It's their daily job. They track this thing. You can only make those projections based on fundamental factors, not trying to imagine what political move somebody may make, next year, which basically it's an impossible task.
But what about the issue of taxes? When you're talking about revenue here, whether from oil or for taxes, the government's talking about increasing the tax base of the country, and then the papers are reporting a possible increase in taxes. Is that a source of revenue that the...
Yeah, basically, I mean, excise tax rates on alcohol and tobacco have been, increased, and that will be basically the implementation of that will be, driven. There are a number of initiatives. The President also talked about the finance bill, and I think perhaps it's premature to basically talk about, some of them, but clearly the structure, the nature of the economy is changing, and so you've got to also look at your tax laws and practices. There's a lot more e-commerce going on, today. That most of that isn't being taxed, So you've got to figure out how to tax that, and that's part of what is happening. There's a shift towards consumption taxes, globally. We are also responding to to that trend, and when you look at the budget, for instance, in terms of, diversification. Again, when people talk about diversification, the government does not plan to become a major economic actor, player, and operator in the field. And so government's revenue is going to come as taxes. So regardless of the, regardless of the activity, the nature of the activity that is being taxed, what you will see in the budget is companies' income tax. When you go into the books of FIRS, then you will see how they have decomposed that into different sectors that they are targeting. That's where you will see that emphasis. You're not going to see, in the government's budget, revenue from tourism or revenue from whatever. Because the government is not an operator that ends.
Okay, Mr. Kabuse, just a minute. Let me bring in Dr. Chris David here. I mean, he's a tax person. So, Chris David, government looking towards tax as a way to fund revenue. That's a natural place to look, isn't it?
Definitely. Well, yeah, all over the world, taxes have remained the only sustainable source of revenue to government. But like I've always maintained that taxation is not fundraising. Taxation should be a catalyst for economic growth and prosperity. Now, the way we administer taxation in Nigeria is actually making companies and individuals not to prosper. Taxation has become a huge burden on companies. So what I was saying about diversifying this economy is how do you design the appropriate tax policy mix that will become the catalyst to spur economic growth and prosperity. That statement I have not seen in the budget. Today, the number of taxes that we are collecting in Nigeria are too many. So if you really want to grow this economy, you have to have that appropriate mix and design that will make companies to actually flourish and pay huge taxes to government. That means government, in designing the tax policy, they will actually help companies and those specific sectors that they want to develop, that I mentioned, tourism, sports. Government is actually supposed to design policies that will encourage people to come into this sector. Not government bringing money to build infrastructure. I also talk about sports as a huge source of revenue. Sport is a big business. But the way we treat sport in Nigeria is more or less a recreational activity and a charitable venture that the government just puts few money. Design a policy that will make private sector come into sports and create employment for Nigerian youths and make a lot of revenue. Can you imagine the UK without the EPL, for instance? That is what I'm talking about. Where is the legal framework? Where is the policy framework that is promoting that? And that's why I said this budget does not reflect the preferred future for Nigeria. So we should be thinking, we should have that foresight. In the next 5 years, where do we want to be? Where do we want this sector, sports, should be? Look at IT. Today, globally, companies that are in IT are the ones making the huge revenue. Apple, for example, the revenue they made between October and September this year is over $265 billion.
David, I need to cut in here.
Facebook, over $40.
Pardon me, I need to bring Dr. Guyemi on this. And speaking about the revenue challenge, funding the 2019 budget proposals, in terms of the non-oil sector, how are we faring?
Non-oil sector, we would have thought that we'll fare better than we are faring now. But you know, the non-oil sector is a function of infrastructure, like Mr. Kabeze said. It's a function of, if you like, stable electricity. It's a function of, you know, stable fiscal policy, not policy somersault. So non-oil sector in Nigeria should be doing better. But I think there's something that is fairly salutable here is the issue of our improving significantly in the area of agriculture. So Nigerians are going to agriculture. Young Nigerians are going to agriculture.
But some of them are complaining about access to those
yes,
facilities.
access to funds. Yes, they are complaining. But they are not saying that agriculture is no longer a preferred area of investment. It's now a preferred area of investment for Nigerian middle class and the Nigerian youth. In fact, civil servants now bind themselves together to invest in agriculture and thereby employ more people.
Is this budget going to allow for the Nigerian person to have more spending, for instance?
No, we are going to spend less in this budget. We are going to spend about less than 300 billion naira, less than what we are spending now, or projected to spend now in 2018. So if we spend less, if we are going to spend less, we are going to do a lot of borrow more. I mean, borrow less, spend less, and the budget is less. Then we cannot. Then it becomes very strange that we have the statistics of 3.01% increase in GDP. I mean, if you are going to spend, from where are you going to get that kind of growth rate?
You know, but does it affect job creation?
Job creation. Job creation, now I cannot see job creation in Nigeria from this budget. What I can just see is a way of managing the very bad situation already. 20.9 million. I mean, it's frightening. Frightening.
All right, we'll have to anchor at that point. Dr. Tunji Oguyemi is a budget historian and a lecturer in Obafemi Awolowo University. We also did have Mr. Ben Akagweze, who is the Director General Budget Office in Abuja Studios, alongside Dr. Chris David, the futurist and tax expert. Gentlemen, thank you all for coming on the program today. All right, so we'll be back in a moment. I turn our attention to another matter entirely. Do stay with us.